KFDI, good morning.
Hey, it's Dusty Slay.
Dusty Slay, how you doing?
I'm doing so good.
So,
How are you?
I'm good. So good to hear from you. Nice to have you back on the show. Lots to get to. You got your night shift tour happening. Closest spot for a road trip for us around here. You can go to Dallas down the 18th of May, which is your 42nd birthday, so that's going to be a good time.
That's true.
Yeah, and May 31st, Chesterfield, Missouri, just outside St. Louis. So a couple of spots to catch up with you. Or how about just, stay in the comfort of your own home and tune into Netflix. Congratulations on your new 1-hour special, Workin Man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so pumped about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait for it to come out. People are a little offended by the title. I've had a couple of people tell me that I'm not a working man. And even my own dad goes, "What's this working man thing?" I think my dad thinks I'm still in high school. I don't think he thinks I've ever worked a day in my life.
Okay, so Dad, what constitutes a working man?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, my dad lives on a farm, right? So he's worked hard, but he was an insurance salesman for most of his life. So, he would go into work every day about 9 a.m. and come home about 2 p.m. So I'm like, you figured out how to work the system out here.
Right.
And, comedy, I've been grinding it out here since, 2008. For several years, I was also a pesticide salesman while doing the night shift as a comedian. And then, for the last 10 years, I've been out here driving all over the country, doing comedy, and I love it, but it is work.
It is hard work for sure. Long, far removed from your days as a child growing up in Alabama in a trailer park. Before I get to all of that, I just want to do a wellness check. How is the state of Alabama now that Nick Saban's retired?
Well, I haven't been back to visit since that happened, but
okay.
One side of Alabama, being the Auburn fans,
sure,
are probably having the greatest time of their life. I mean, they just got a new coach that they're very excited about.
Right.
Nick Saban's gone. Auburn University is having the celebration of the century. But Tuscaloosa's probably pretty dang sad.
Yeah, you're probably right. Back to the trailer park we go. As a kid, your mom working very hard to put food on the table. Was there that one meal? Think about that one meal that made you feel like a king when Mom served it every so often for one of those special occasions where you knew a lot of money went into it. What's that one meal you got in your head that takes you back?
Well, I don't know any meal that a lot of money went into.
Okay.
But I would say, at one point we bought a wok, and my mom was making these stir fries. And I would say the stir fry felt pretty fancy.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got a little meat and vegetables and some of those water chestnuts.
Yes.
I would say that felt pretty fancy.
That makes you feel fancy without having to spend the gas money to go down to the corner and pick it up. Am I right?
That is exactly right. And also, growing up, I didn't even know that salmon was a fish, really. We would have these salmon patties that I guess salmon came out of a can, and my mom would put it in this patty type form.
Right.
And then fry it up. And I didn't know that was really my introduction into a type of a crab cake, being a salmon patty. But those were delicious and felt pretty fancy.
Yeah,
honestly.
right. Parents are sneaky when they get that food in there that you don't know what you're eating. You just know it tastes good. Then they don't tell you until afterwards.
I was in my 20s before I think I ever had salmon the fish.
Ooh.
I was like, oh, this is how it comes?
That's living. Yeah, that is living for sure. In the trailer park, during your childhood and before and after you left, did you notice an unusual number of tornadoes there, Dusty? I mean, or, as opposed to like your neighbor's house? Is there truth to the rumors that for some reason, whatever it is, Mother Nature just picks on the trailer parks with the tornadoes?
Well, I think there is some truth to it, but I also think that there's just a general fear of storms when you live in a trailer. People think it's just the tornadoes, but it's every storm. Once in Alabama, we had a rare ice storm that froze a tree limb. The tree limb broke out of the tree, fell like an arrow, and stabbed through the roof of our trailer. Collapsed a shelf containing a lot of ceramic owls that my mom had.
Oh, no.
And my mom had. I don't know why I pluralized her. But it stabbed, and these ceramic owls went everywhere, shattering all over the trailer floor.
Oh, it's terrifying. Tragic loss.
Very sad day. I think the only storm or natural disaster we weren't afraid of would be an earthquake. I mean, it's like, what's even going to fall on us? The owls are already on the ground.
Right. You're safe. You're good.
Yeah.
Nothing to worry about. Best advice a fellow comedian gave you?
There was a comic. He's from Nashville. He lives in New York City now, named Keith Alberstadt. And I don't know if it was any particular word of advice that he gave me, but he taught me, about the club circuit. And I visited and talked with him once in New York City, and he explained to me kind of how the club circuit worked.
Mm-hmm.
And he said Nashville was great for him because of the location to all of these other clubs around the country. You can be in Chicago in 8 hours from Nashville, but there's also other cities that are much closer: Atlanta, Birmingham, Indianapolis, Louisville, Lexington, so many cities, and they all have comedy clubs. And he taught me, that you can make a living in Nashville, even just as an opener, working this circuit. And that is how I modeled my comedy, which is why I've been able to do what I did in comedy without ever having to move to New York or LA.
That's like working smarter, not harder, is what that is.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
100%. With your comedy, and again, Dusty Slay, your Workin Man 1 hour Netflix special out this week, and super excited for you. With your comedy, are there topics you just stay away from?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff I just stay away from. And I think in general, I try to think, all right, and at this point, I don't even think about these kinds of jokes, but I think, all right, if I do something politically or religious or this or that, is that going to offend people in the audience, or even further than that, well, is that going to hurt people's feelings, right? Like when I was a drinker, I was a bit heavier of a guy,
right,
and I used to make jokes about my own weight. And then it just occurred to me one day, I was like, what if somebody in the audience is a heavier person, and I don't want to make them feel worse about themselves by coming to my show. I want people to come to my show, laugh, have a good time, and feel better about themselves. So I try to eliminate anything out of my act that's going to make people feel worse about their lives.
That's a really great take, because I think a lot of times, and I've defaulted to the self-deprecating humor before, but without the insight of knowing that you may think the only person you're hurting is yourself, but there are people who might be in the same boat as you who are hearing that and thinking, well, okay, that's all of a sudden projecting on me too. So that's really an interesting thing I hadn't thought about. So.
Yeah, just, and it's like there's some self-death stuff that I do, and it's like you can't save everyone, and at some point you got to know that, all right, the audience is full of adults,
yep,
and they got to be able to handle a joke. But I just try to eliminate as much as possible.
Let's go back to Mom for a second. My mom, very hardworking. For the last 50 years, she's been a server, a waitress, and that's how she supported us as a single mom. And I disappointed her one year by knowing all of this and knowing money was tight. I still stole money out of her tip jar to head down to the arcade. She was a bit disappointed.
Oh, no.
Yes, dude. I've already confessed it to her. We've moved past it. I felt terrible. But do you have a story like that where you disappointed Mom? Times were hard, and is there something that sticks out?
Well, fortunately, I never really stole, right? But my mom had to stay with my grandmother a little bit when I was like a senior in high school, because my grandmother was getting real old and kind of sick.
Sure.
And I was throwing a lot of parties at my house while my mom was gone. And my mom has walked in a few times in the midst of some kind of party.
Oh, no.
And I feel like that was a real kind of disappointment to her.
Yeah.
So I always feel bad about that, but what do you do,
Yeah, for sure. You a football fan?
I do. I love football. I love college football, most of all.
Okay.
The NFL, I'm a little into, but I don't know. I have my doubts about what's going on with football now that betting is heavily involved.
Yeah.
It makes me sad.
You and me both, for sure. Do you have a pick for the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I'd love to see the Detroit Lions go all the way.
Yeah.
I think that would be really great. I don't know if that's my pick. It's hard to pick anything these days.
Sure.
But that's my hope.
All right.
Who goes? I mean, I know Michigan just won the national championship.
Yeah.
But growing up, my sister's 11 years older than me. I have several sisters, but my oldest one is 11 years older than me. And she married a guy from Michigan, and they started dating when I was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of been like my brother, and he's from Michigan, went to college at the University of Michigan. So I've always liked Michigan,
Right.
you know.
Right on.
So I'd love to see Detroit go all the way. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. All your time you spent in the food industry, whether it be washing dishes or being a waiter, you got a bad customer story? You got a story where the customer was just, let's just say, unreasonable?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's lots of unreasonable people when you're waiting tables. But I don't know that anyone in particular sticks out to me, but this one guy came in alone one time, and he kept asking he was just trying to be so fancy, and he just kept asking for artesian water. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't think we have anything like that. And eventually he goes, you ain't got no bottled water in here? And I go, oh, yeah, we got bottled water.
Right.
I just didn't know what he was talking about.
Artesian water.
And I just think he was a real cool kind of guy.
Sure.
And I just think he was disappointed that he got a male server on that day.
Got it.
I think that's what happened.
Kind of a hipster. Maybe you should have just given him a salmon cake and been like, here, this is fancy.
I should have.
A couple more questions before we go, because I know you're busy this morning. One, how do you feel about self-driving cars?
Well, I was just in Phoenix, Arizona,
Yep.
and they have a lot of self-driving Ubers now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little unnerving.
Thank you.
I don't think I'm into it.
I'm not at all. I don't know whether
No, it's pretty strange.
whether it's a trust thing or whatever, but I can't get down with it. I need to be hands on the wheel, and I better have a driver if I'm in an Uber. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I didn't do the Uber, but I was in a car with a guy, and we drove up next to a self-driving car. And the guy I was with is pretty familiar with him, and he kind of bullied the car a little bit. He said, you can do this sort of thing. And it was weird, and I was like, I'm not into it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Finally, you got a hidden talent?
Well, people, I don't know. I'm a really good swimmer.
Okay.
And I think that I'm very fast at swimming, and I think that based on my body type, which I'm pretty slim, but I don't look like a swimmer, I think it fools people, and I don't think they know I'm a good swimmer.
Hey, look, you know what? Penguins aren't necessarily the shape of someone you would think would be a good swimmer, but look how fast they can go.
That's absolutely right. That's a great point.
100%. All right, listen, I am so looking forward to grabbing the remote and watching Workin Man. That is your new 1 hour special today. Dusty Slay is what you're looking for. Watch it on Netflix, and if you get a chance, see him in person because he's very, very funny. Dusty, I wish you all the best, and I look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.